Good afternoon. This is Dr. Trevor Small in the Insight Treatment Hour on 98.1 KHTS AM 1220. I hope that everyone had a wonderful holiday and is taking good care, and thank you so much for joining me on the air today. And I have the pleasure, really, if I can use the term honor, of speaking with a good friend and colleague, Heather Hayes, who's on the line with me right now. Hi, Heather.
Hi, thank you for having me. Absolutely. And I agree. Happy holidays, everyone. I hope everybody's staying safe.
Yes, and Heather and I actually have known each other for many years, got to be over 10 years. And I have had the pleasure of working with Heather in lots of different capacities. But I want to, if it's all right, Heather, just for a bit, talk about you, because you you do so many interesting things, and one of them, just as a little sort of teaser to our audience, is as a hostage negotiator. And so, in addition to being probably, if I may say so, in my opinion, the best interventionist in the United States, and I say that without question and without qualm, and of course that's my personal opinion, but I have to tell you that I have enormous respect for what you do as an interventionist and as a professional, and I've seen it time and time again, how successful you are. And I just would love, could we talk a little, how did you become a hostage negotiator? What is that? Tell me about that.
So that's such a great question. So can I back up for 2 seconds before that too, and just say, my whole journey really started with my own struggles with addiction. So when I was 21, I was studying psychology in hopes that would help me quit using so much cocaine and drinking so much, and check myself into rehab. And so then once I got into recovery, I knew probably more than anything I'd ever known in my life that I wanted to help other people. So I got a master's degree up in Boston and came back to Atlanta, where I'm based. And I had been working as a therapist and interventionist, from about 1983, 84. And in 2001, I ran into my county's head of the negotiation team, or crisis negotiation team as it's called. And we struck up a conversation, and he mentioned to me that there was a new model going around back then where the hostage negotiation teams brought in mental health professionals, and would I be interested? And so, as a person who at one time was scared of the police, the idea that I might be working with the police was absolutely intriguing. So within a year, I had trained with the FBI. I had trained with some of NYPD's finest. And I do it as a give back to my community. Next year it'll be 20 years of volunteering for the team. We get called out a lot. The stakes are high. It's very intense, and I love being able to help serve in that way.
That is wild. That's absolutely wild. Let me just move right into a question, if I can, before we jump into another couple areas. Is something that comes up from parents all the time when I'm speaking with them, is how to help their teenagers interact in a positive way with law enforcement when they come into contact with them. And I bring this up because many times, of course, teenagers will be teenagers, and they might be in a park after hours when they shouldn't be, or they might be getting themselves into something that maybe they shouldn't be getting themselves into. What are some suggestions, given that you really do work, I think, in both sides of the world here? You work with law enforcement, you work with families. What are some things that parents can talk to their kids about in interacting with law enforcement to have it be a positive outcome versus one that might be a little bit more anxiety-provoking?
Well, I really think that a lot of it comes back to not jumping into your fear, especially if you're a teenager and you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. I think where a lot of teens are at risk are when they run, or they get in an argument, or they fight back. So it goes to a lot of, basically being respectful. Yes, sir, let me stop. What is it that you want to ask me about? And we live in a time where there's a lot of anxiety around law enforcement. And I think if any of us hear that message over and over again, that the police want to harm us, or they want to hurt us, that we would run. We would be scared of them. And so I think talking to your children about not feeding into that anxiety and being respectful. And if a police officer comes up, don't do things to provoke or make the situation worse.
Yeah, exactly. I think that those are great ideas, because I think that understanding and teaching our kids that it's okay to be nervous when they interact with somebody, especially if they're doing something maybe they shouldn't be doing, but to also keep in mind that law enforcement is really there to protect them and to make sure they make good choices. And if they're not making a good choice, to help guide them towards a better choice. And it's really, an opportunity for our teenagers to have an educational experience versus a negative experience, right? Yeah.
And I feel like the narratives that we bring to our children are important too. If we, are talking in a derogatory way about law enforcement versus talking about the fact that it's okay to be nervous, that, of course, there are difficult things that are happening around the country. We need to all, be careful but be respectful. But if someone doesn't even have those conversations or only hears, that police are bad or they want to hurt you, then it doesn't set the stage well. People are going to have more anxiety, and it's difficult. It's a very difficult topic that we're living with these days.
Absolutely. And, I'll tell you that something I'd love to move towards is this idea of what you do really most of the time, which is as an interventionist. And so many of us, I think, have a vague understanding of what an interventionist is from media. Of course, there's lots of television shows and things like this. But tell me a little bit about what you do, about how you help families, maybe working with families with teenagers in crisis, those sorts of things.
Absolutely. So I think there are a lot of stereotypes of what an intervention is or what it looks like. There are actually a lot of different models of intervention in different ways, but the most important piece is that it's a way to come together with someone you love that you're worried about, be it an eating disorder, drug or alcohol addiction, mental health issues, and coming together in a way that you help motivate them to go and get help and go and get treatment. And as an interventionist, I may know a lot. I've got counseling degrees. I've got 35 years of experience. So I may know a lot about the mechanics of getting someone to agree to get help, or I may know a lot about mental health and addiction, but I mean nothing to the person that I am working with. What means the most to them are their connections with their loved ones, their families, and their friends. So in an intervention, we pull together and work in tandem to help someone, make that decision to go and get help. And for families to really look at, how do I help support your health and not contribute to your demise? Because there are a lot of things that families pull together to do to help their loved ones. None of us want to see our loved ones suffer or in pain. And I think that our industry, our treatment industry, the addiction industry, we've done a lot of pathologizing of families when families are really doing what they normally naturally do as humans with hearts. Like, none of us want to see our loved ones suffer. So if you have a child who's addicted and they're in pain and they're asking for money or they're telling you, here's what would make it better, a lot of parents come in and we call it enabling, and families will come to me and it's almost, they'd rather, it's like almost worse to call them an enabler than a 4-letter word. And I like to take a look at that and say, again, you're just doing what you're normally naturally drawn to do. What's important is that addiction and mental health issues don't play by the right rules. So that's where we come in and work with the entire family system to begin to change and shift how they interact with their loved one who has an addiction. When you have a teenager, it's very different because adolescent addiction in a lot of ways is very serious. Most addiction tends to start early on. But when you have an immature, undeveloped brain and you pour drugs and alcohol on top of it, it can do a lot of damage. The good news is that if you can help someone early on get help, they've got the rest of their life, and the brain is a very resilient organ, and it can also begin to heal. So when we work with teenagers, it's often difficult for families because they maybe haven't seen as much history, or parents themselves have used. So they say, well, I smoked pot and did acid when I was in high school, and now I'm okay. But we live in a really different world today. We live in a world where we've got very, very frightening issues going on, like fentanyl in pills and in cocaine and in heroin, and we are seeing, up to 197 overdose deaths a day. So we now live in a world where there are a lot of teens who are even just trying stuff for the first time, and they overdose and die.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, regrettably, I can't tell you, it has been more than, I hate to say this, but it's been more than 10 families that have come to me just this year alone that have related to me that in their child experimenting, their teen experimenting with some sort of prescription pill that they obtained from a quote-unquote friend, there was fentanyl in it, and they had an overdose. And so things, I agree with you, are getting more and more serious. What do we do with families that are struggling with the idea of an intervention? For a lot of families, they say, "Oh, that's not my son or daughter," right? The school is wrong. Yeah, it's not my kid. The school is wrong. Their pediatrician is wrong. Their counselor is wrong. Everybody's wrong. That's not my kid. How do we help? What do we do?
Well, I think in the bigger picture, again, I think a lot of this is a societal issue. It has a lot to do with sort of our ideologies and the things that we propagate. And we live in a very chemical culture where there's if you have a headache, take a pill. Don't just take a pill, take an extra strength pill. If you are, having a good time, it'll be made even better if you can have a beer. So we live in a chemical culture. But what's important is that, our families have loved ones that by the time they find out, the addiction is often far more advanced, or they find out because there's been an overdose. So some of it is coming in, and I think on a bigger level, helping educate families about what addiction is. I mean, if you think about it, in our schools, we have fire drills, we have tornado drills, and unfortunately, in the world we live in, we also have active shooter drills.
Yes.
But we know that addiction is far more likely to kill our children. So where in our school systems are our addiction drills? Where are our town hall meetings pulling together where we're educating families even more about what addiction is, what it looks like, and that it's not a disgrace to get help? And here's what the signs and symptoms are and what it looks like. It's also the only illness where parents almost become diagnosticians themselves. They'll come to me and they'll say, well, I don't think, little Billy's got addiction. I think he's ADD, or I think he's got mental health issues, or I don't think it's that bad. And we wouldn't do that with any other illness. We wouldn't have a tumor and say, hey, I poked it, I think it's okay. So it's important to know.
Yeah, that's a great point. You're right. Yeah, I mean, I don't go into my dentist if I've cracked a tooth and I say, well, I think that I've got a sore on my tongue. That's the reason why it's hard to chew, right?
Exactly, right. So again, we have people that do nothing. We have physicians that are addictionologists that do nothing but diagnose whether there's an addiction issue. We have addictionologists, psychiatrists who diagnose mental health issues. We have lots of therapists that are able to come in and help diagnose. So I think one piece is for parents to begin to, reach outside of themselves and ask for help, get an evaluation. But I think there are other issues that get in the way. I mean, part of it, there's so many different types of addictions too. If you start to look at the process addictions, you've got gaming addiction, you've got sexting and sexual addiction, you've got all of these issues, eating disorders. So as a parent, if you don't understand what the issues are, it's hard to see it, and it's hard to talk to your children about. I mean, it's hard enough to talk to your children about sex, much less saying to your children, don't take naked pictures of yourself at 12 years old and send them to someone else.
Yeah.
So there's, again, there's the whole, like, it's not my child. And that's sort of a protective, like, no one wants to think it's their child, particularly if you had it generationally, you had a parent or a grandparent who had addiction. It's almost like, oh, so scary and painful to think, here it is again in my own child. But then there's also not understanding what it really is and how to talk to your children about it. And then stigma comes in, and families have that sense of shame and, like, no one else is struggling with this, and I don't know who I talk to or how I talk to about it.
Yes, absolutely. And we bring up this idea of community, right? This idea of a community to where you don't feel alone. So we talk about at Insight, of course, that a major component of Insight, as you know, is community, is having the parents come and feel that they can learn from the parents that have been there before, having the kids know that they're not alone in all of this. And maybe if we hold on to that thought, because I think we're coming up on our first commercial break, so why don't we hold on to that thought? And again, this is 98.1 KHTS and AM 1220, and just want to welcome you all to the Insight Treatment Hour, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
It's time to plan that incredible holiday feast, which means it's time to visit Bob's Country Meats. You see, Bob's Country Meats has the finest prime ribs, turkey, and ham. You'll taste the difference. Want to make your holiday feast really stand out? How about serving a traditional Christmas goose? Goose, ribs, prime rib, ham, turkey. You know you'll get the best at Santa Clarita's store for quality meats. Bob's Country Meats. Place your order now on Soledad in Canyon Country. This holiday, make it Bob's Country Meats.
This holiday music is brought to you by Providence Holy Cross Medical Center, your community health partner. To learn more about their award-winning care, call 1-888-HEALING or visit online at providence.org/holycross.
Hi, I'm Miles McNamara, Certified Senior Advisor and owner of Comfort Keepers in Home Care. Our caregivers help you in your own home. A Comfort Keeper can provide companionship, meal preparation, medication monitoring, assistance with personal care, transportation to doctor appointments, all enhancing your independence and safety in the comfort and privacy of your own home. So if you or someone you love could use a helping hand at home, call Comfort Keepers at 287-4200. That's 287-4200.
Your hometown station.
Life takes us in different directions sometimes, and we may not always have computer access for breaking news. KHTS has a solution. Text alerts. Breaking news you need to know about fast. Freeway closed? We'll text you directly. Emergency police activity in the Santa Clarita Valley? We'll text you. Sign up now for text alerts at hometownstation.com. KHTS has your back.
98.1 FM and AM 1220.
No words can describe the power of belonging to a group of close friends or being part of a family. Insight Treatment Center was founded more than 20 years ago to give teenagers a community of friends and family as they overcome issues like depression, anxiety, and trauma. The new Santa Clarita location is a COVID-secure environment where distance and good airflow are a priority. As a leader in providing intensive outpatient treatment to teenagers, Insight Treatment Center in Santa Clarita is here to help. Call 888-295-9995 or go online to insighttreatment.com.
Consumers Furniture is back open for your business. The safety of our community and our staff, above all, is most important to us. We will provide a safe and clean environment for you to find the perfect piece of furniture for your home. To help you with your purchase, we are offering 25% off your entire order or 24 months same as cash financing. And for our awesome essential workers, we will deliver locally your furniture free of charge. Consumers Furniture is located in the Centerpoint Shopping Center, below Sam's Club and Walmart.
98.1 FM and AM 1220, the community's choice.
Thank you, KHTS, for keeping me posted with the latest on COVID-19.
Good afternoon, 98.1 FM and AM 1220 KHTS. Thank you so much for spending some of your Monday afternoon with us at the Insight Treatment Hour. This is Dr. Trevor Small, the Director of Clinical Development at Insight Treatment, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Heather Hayes, a nationally and world-recognized interventionist. And so thank you again, Heather, for spending some of your afternoon with us. And we were just talking a little bit about this idea of community, and something that I think is so wonderful about the work that you do with the families that bring you on is the integration of the family into not only the interventionist but also throughout the process of treatment. And I wondered if you could talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. So we all know, and all the research shows, that if you don't treat the entire family system, a teen will leave home, go to treatment, do well, but if they come back, and this is true for young adults and adults, if they come back into the exact same dynamics in the family system, it makes it much more difficult for them to have sustainable recovery. So we believe that it's important to work with the entire family system on our end so that we're beginning to help support the family in making the shifts and changes while their loved one's off at treatment doing the same, so that when they come together, again, it's still, there's some bumps that will happen when someone's been away for a while, but that everyone is as equipped as they can be to help handle that and to have support.
Because, the family, I would imagine, and we were talking a little earlier about this idea of this can't be happening to my son or my daughter, but the opportunity for growth for the family, right, is so tremendous through the treatment process.
Absolutely. And sometimes I really do believe that it's that teenager who leads the family into healing. That often, we know that 1 in 4 children under 18 have got a family member somewhere in their family system that also has addiction, 1 in 4. So sometimes that's also part of what gets in the way is a person's own relationship with chemicals or gambling or sexual addiction. And so it's these teens who maybe not happily in the beginning, maybe defiantly, but are really sort of the ones with their behavior acting out, saying something's wrong here in this family. And I'm angry, or I'm self-destructing, or I'm holding all my feelings in and not expressing them in a way that's beneficial. And in their getting help, the family system comes along behind them. It's not uncommon that families will look back and say, this was the most life-changing event that we ever had, and many others in the family begin to rewrite the script. We know that addiction and mental health issues are generational. We can do a family tree and look and see it's rare that it's just started with the teenager. That you can find it with parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles. And what's important is that we begin to look at getting families tools so that we're not also dealing with it down the road with their unborn grandchildren. I think,
right.
We have a large number of teens today that are in recovery. We have so many young people in recovery that we have over 200 universities that have set up what are called collegiate recovery campuses. These are programs within universities that individuals, students, our young people have pulled together and said, I'm going to college and I want to have recovery. I want to have sober support. I want to have a fellowship here on campus to help me counteract the big party environment. Over 200 of those. And that's from our young people getting into recovery early on, making those changes, and they're really our leaders. And I think a lot of the young people that are in recovery because their parents are also in recovery. So they are easily able to recognize the signs and symptoms and reach out and get help for their children early on.
You bring up a fantastic point. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but when I was 18, I got sober. And so I got sober when I was in between my freshman and sophomore years of college. And my experience was very much that I really had nobody else that I really had interacted with in my university that was sober. And so it was a challenge negotiating fraternity parties and, tailgating events and all those sorts of things sober, because there was no roadmap. And I think, yes, these wonderful opportunities for people to have sober college experiences within a community is so important. So important.
I know they sober tailgating. I too, I was at University of Georgia, not doing a really good job at being at University of Georgia. I had like a whopping 1.19 when I went into treatment. And I mean, I literally went to the wrong class, not much, but I went to the wrong class one semester and thought I was helping the professor when I went up during the midterm, which I did show up for. And I was like, I think you switched the numbers. And he was like, I'm pretty sure I know where I am now. I know where I am. I think you're the one who's a little confused. It was pretty disastrous. But you're right. I got out of treatment, didn't go back to Georgia, but it was hard because I was the only person I knew who was sober at the time. And so it's really heartwarming for me to see all of these young adults pulling together to give themselves support on campuses. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are curious about what is an intervention. What are the steps of an intervention for if we have how does a family start the process? How does the team get involved? Like what does a typical intervention look like?
That's a great question. So I can tell you how I do them and how my team, how we work together. And one of the things that I can tell you that I think is the most important about the work that I do is that I have a team, because a lot of the situations that we work with, a lot of the families that we work with, it's very complex. Families of today, you often have steps and halves, and so the family tree almost goes as wide as it does long. So things can get sort of complex and complicated. So it's important that we as clinicians work supporting each other and able to help offer everything that we can in support to the family members we work with. But it starts with a family calling and, going over what the situation is. And I'm always curious as to sort of, what's happening in the moment, what the crisis is, but then what the bigger picture is as well. So we do a lot of work on the front end before we actually get to the intervention. I get histories, confidential histories from a lot of different family members or friends because different people will see it differently. We spend time working with the family beginning from, right off the bat, talking about how important it is that they also do their own work, their own self-care. And then the intervention itself is a 2-day process. So generally we'll get together with family members the day before just to help ease anxiety, to go over sort of what if this happens? What if little Billy runs out of the room? What if he says, I'm not going to go? How do you respond? And a lot of that is just helping everyone to feel comfortable about, or as comfortable as they can about the intervention. There are 2 different ways I work. One way is more what you think of, which is the surprise intervention, where the person doesn't really know that we're coming, and then we show up with an excuse. It's it's not my favorite way to work because I don't like I don't like the lack of transparency, but there are safety issues that are considered. So that's where that kind of intervention for me is, I'll go if I think someone's going to run away, if I think there's child endangerment, if I think if there's domestic violence in the home, if it's too frightening for the family. But the other way that we do an intervention is an intervention by invitation, where we would actually have transparency and say to the person, we love you, we care about you, we're very worried, we've been talking to a counselor, and we'd like to get together and have a family meeting to talk about our concerns and talk about a plan. And so in that way, either way, we still have our practice meeting, but we work to have everyone prepared. We have the intervention the next day with the person that we're concerned about. And those meetings can take anywhere from a couple of hours to a little bit longer. The longest I've had has been probably 8 hours. And it's really working from a motivational place of we love you, we care about you, here's everything that's right about you. Because people, when they have addiction issues or mental health issues, are carrying around so much shame and so much low self-esteem. that it's important to help remind them why we're even taking this time out, that we know they're going to be angry. We know they're going to be upset. And our love for them and our concern is more important than their anger. Anger is often a way that young adults and teenagers use, and adults, to say, shut up, I'm not going to talk about it. And it works. People walk on eggshells around that anger. I can't talk to little Billy because he's going to get angry. So I had a mom say to me about 20 years ago, I want to get together. If my child never speaks to me again after this and they're alive, I will have done my job. What I can't tolerate is for us to keep going the way we're going and have them potentially die from this illness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, there are a lot of myths about intervention. I think one of the myths, and I understand where it comes from. The myth is a person won't get better until they've hit rock bottom and they're ready to get help. And I think that is sort of a message that does kind of come from, Al-Anon. I think there's an important place for that message. But with the drugs that our teens are using today, with the, again, immature, undeveloped brains, when people are impaired, it is very difficult for them to suddenly get that clarity where they say, hey, today's the day I'm going to quit and go check myself in and get help. Because you can't make a sane decision from an impaired place, when your brain chemistry is off. So part of what I love about intervention is that the family system comes together, we work with the person, we appeal to them to go and get help. Often there's pressure there. Families make decisions about what contributes to the health, what adds to the demise, and they don't want to do that. But once a person then goes into treatment and they have detoxed, their brain chemistry is cleared, and this is important, they're given tools to manage the feelings and things that are coming up, then 2-3 weeks in, I think they're able to make a good decision about whether they want to change their life or not. And all the research shows a person does not need to say they're ready for treatment, be willing to go, happy to go for it to be successful. Quite the opposite.
And, I think that brings me to my next question, which is how do you get especially a teenager, and I think speaking as a parent of two incredibly compliant kids, who still will push back, when I ask them to do something that they're not, excited to do. How do you, with all of, as we're talking about sort of the shame and the anxiety and the fear surrounding getting better, because I think that also for a lot of kids and a lot of adults, the idea of, well, if I get better, that means that I then have to confront a lot of the things that I've been hiding with substances or process addictions. So how do we get that resistant person to come along with us? What do we do?
So you're right. I mean, for some people, they're actually, once they get into treatment and things, their brain chemistry settles down and they're more accepting of the fact that they're there, the shame, there's freedom. They don't have to tell their parents everything that they've done, but the fact that they can talk to someone about that and get that off their chest, there is a freedom to that. But in most states, a parent can sign their child into treatment against their will if they're 17, under 18 years old. So again, it can be a difficult decision for parents, but the important thing is that it does come along and help disrupt this negative process of pouring drugs and alcohol on top of an immature, undeveloped brain, high-risk behaviors. And so again, I think what's important is when a family makes that decision that they're going to send their child to treatment, that they've tried other things and it's gotten to the point where this is what needs to happen for their safety and for the family. It's more, how do you do that? When I first started working on adolescent units back in 1983, one of the ways that teens would come in, and it still happens today, is what the teens would call being gooned, where they're woken up in the middle of the night, the parents are asked to leave the home, and they're introduced to two guys who put hands on them and say, come on, we're going, and take them to treatment. And I never felt comfortable with that. In fact, I felt so uncomfortable with that model that I developed my own model of transport that I believe is much more respectful and also minimizes any abduction trauma, because there are kids all over that will talk about, my parents left, I didn't really know what was happening. I also think if we're saying to parents, you're part of this process, then they should be from the beginning. So part of what happens is, again, all safety measures are there. We know that teenagers can be impulsive. Sometimes they'll run. Sometimes they'll make very poor decisions. So all the safety pieces are in place. But in having the parents sit with their teen and say to them, again, we love you, we care about you, hear all your great qualities, and explaining, here's why we've made this decision. When someone's over 18, you say, will you please go get help? But under 18, here's why we made this decision for you.
Right.
And then, I work with, one of the things that I'm often there with the family, but I'll still doing the intervention piece. And then on the way to treatment, again, they'll go with 2 transporters because we want to make sure that they're safe, that there's someone with them at all times, but also looking at the fact that, we don't want to do anything that could be re-traumatizing. So, because a lot of our teenagers have also experienced trauma.
Right. Well, Heather, let me do this. Let me hold us right here for just a moment, because I know we're coming up on a break, and I want to talk about, when we come back, to the transport experience and a little bit about levels of care, because I know that I'm getting some texts from some of our longtime listeners. Just if we could talk about that for just a minute too. So again, this is 98.1 FM KHTS and AM 1220 in the Inside Treatment Hour. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
It's allergy season again. You've tried it all, yet your sinuses continue to be a problem. Try something different, something holistic, something that will really work. Acupuncture. Kathleen Keneally is Santa Clarita's acupuncture and NATE specialist. She's been treating many of your neighbors and their children for allergies, sinuses, headaches, and pain. Find out how acupuncture can improve the quality of your life. Call Kathleen Keneally for a free phone consultation. 252-4100. 252-4100. Acupuncture. It really works.
Finding the right lawyer can be a challenge, but in Santa Clarita, there's no need to search when there's Hacker Law Group, Santa Clarita's premier litigation firm. Jeffrey Hacker has represented celebrities, financial institutions, accident victims, real estate developers, realtors, contractors, businesses, nonprofit organizations, and other individuals and companies with their legal challenges. Mr. Hacker is one of Santa Clarita's leaders, consistently listed as one of our most influential. When everything is on the line and you need legal counseling, visit hackerlawgroup.com.
No words can describe the power of belonging to a group of close friends or being part of a family. Insight Treatment Center was founded more than 20 years ago to give teenagers a community of friends and family as they overcome issues like depression, anxiety, and trauma. The new Santa Clarita location is a COVID-secure environment where distance and good airflow are a priority. As a leader in providing intensive outpatient treatment to teenagers, Insight Treatment Center in Santa Clarita is here to help. Call 888-295-9995 or go online to insighttreatment.com.
KHTS strives to give the Santa Clarita Valley all the information they need. And when our computers aren't working the way they should, we call Resurgence, your true source for IT. Resurgence provides outstanding customer service while also providing the highest technical ability. They strive to do what's best to improve and protect your business. For more information on Resurgence, call 349-4114 or visit resurgenceit.com.
I'm Tamara Gurney, President and CEO of Mission Valley Bank, Santa Clarita Valley's local community business bank dedicated to supporting small businesses throughout our community. As a matter of fact, Mission Valley Bank made over 360 Paycheck Protection or PPP loans totaling over $72 million to local small businesses to help them navigate these challenging times. Our commitment to small businesses throughout our community will not waver as we look forward. On behalf of everyone at Mission Valley Bank, we're wishing you a happy holiday season.
All local, all day.
Thanks, KHTS. Thanks, KHTS. Thanks, KHTS.
98.1 FM and AM 1220.
Hello, this is Dr. Small with the Insight Treatment Hour on 98.1 FM, KHTS, and AM 1220 with Heather Hayes, an interventionist, an expert in the field of interventions. And before I forget, I want to make sure that for those listeners that are curious about Heather and the work that she does, she has a website. You can find her at heatherhayes.com. Of course, that's going to be up on the KHTS website as well. She is in the process of writing a book, which I'm very excited to read, and has some of the most wonderful blog articles currently on her website, many of them dealing with adolescence and parenting and how to help your teens in substance abuse and anxiety. And so I just wanted to make sure, Heather, I didn't forget to mention all those wonderful resources that you have.
Thank you.
We were talking a little bit about transport, this experience of transport, when we do know that a teenager has to head to a residential program, and how you've developed an outline so that it's not traumatic for the teens. And I wondered if we could just sort of finish that thought.
Absolutely. It's called the Respectful Adolescent Treatment Protocol. And part of what we do is we make sure everyone that works for me goes through a 16-hour training that I teach myself, where I teach them about trauma, about how to help with someone's anxieties, how to help talk someone through the process. You know, again, we come in from a place, we don't want to put hands on people. We don't, but we also want to keep them safe. So, again, they are taken to treatment in a way where it really is more like they're assisted in getting there rather than taken. So it's respectful. And what I love about what we do is that often, you know, again, it's traumatic for a kid anyway to leave their home, go into a different environment. You know, that's hard. But I feel good about the fact that, you know, teenagers that we've helped transport, when the guys that have taken them end up taking someone else to a place, like the clients come up and give them a hug and tell them how good it is to see them and tell them how well they're doing. And the reports that we get back from treatment facilities and wilderness programs is that our kids get there and they're not quite as angry as a lot of the others who are taken in the middle of the night. And so we just try and really help work through that. There's much, much more written about it on my website. There are a lot of blogs that I've written on the trauma-informed transport. So I won't spend a whole lot of time going over that, but I do think it's important, and I think it's important that, you know, our teens be treated with the same kind of respect that our adults get treated with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't be in more agreement. And you know, something that comes to mind as well is this idea of in-person treatment. You know, when COVID, when the pandemic first became evident in March and programs were closing all over the United States, reducing the availability for teens to get in-person care, Frederick Schulin, who you know we both love and who's often a host on the show as well, who is the CEO at Insight, decided, I think, in a very wise manner, said, listen, we really need to keep open. And we need to keep open and keep doing in-person care, because these kids, without having the opportunity to be with their peers and to get services in, you know, face-to-face, it's such risk, such tremendous risk for what they could do to themselves or what they could get into. And so, you know, when you speak about helping these kids get into residential programs, getting that needed in-person care is so very, very important to help them and their families move on and get the help they need, right?
Absolutely, because teenagers in particular, there's several tasks of adolescence, several developmental tasks that teenagers go through and things that are so important to them. And socialization and connection and peer group is huge. And it helps them, you know, again, to fight that tendency to isolate. I think one of the things that I think of when I think of working with teenagers is that struggle a lot of them go through. It's almost what I call the teenage existential angst. Why is the world so hard? Why do I hurt so much? Why are there so many places where I feel awkward or uncomfortable? Why do I look at the television or on YouTube and see so many horrible things happening? And so for teens, again, a lot of that is healed through hearing other peers struggle with the same thing, and that together teenagers work to find, what is my purpose? Why am I here? How do I make meaning out of life? How do I find out, what I'm passionate about? How do I really look at, again, what do I want to do when I grow up? Because teen years are all about that. How am I going to launch into adult life? And do I feel prepared? And again, it's a time where kids, explore sex, sexuality, what's my truth? Have I mastered anything? Do I feel, where's my self-esteem?
Right. So many things, so many things to master. And I think, and as adults, I think oftentimes as parents, I know that I often sometimes do make this mistake is forgetting how many things we ask our teenagers to look at in the 4 or 5 short years, before, in between middle school and college. It's tremendous.
And
Heather,
pressure.
I just want to take a moment and thank you so much for spending some of your afternoon with us and the listeners today, and also for what you're doing, because it is so very important and integral to saving the lives of so many kids and adults out there. So thank you for what you're doing. Really, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I feel like we could have talked for hours, so I'm happy to come back anytime. And thank you. And thank you, everyone who's taking time to listen. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Stay safe.
So please make sure to go to Heather's website, heatherhayes.com, and also on there you'll find her blogs of lots of different topics of interest. And thank you all for listening today on the Inside Treatment Hour, 98.1 FM, KHTS, and AM 1220. Looking forward to speaking with you next week.